Can I be honest with you about something that nobody really wants to say out loud? Most of us don't drift from God when life falls apart. We drift when life gets good. We drift when the bank account finally looks right, when the relationship finally feels stable, when the health reports comes back clean, when the door we've been praying over finally swings wide open. That's when we stop talking to Him like we used to. That's when the prayers get shorter. The mornings start without Him. The Bible collects a little dust on the nightstand. Not because we're angry at God, not because we stopped believing, but because somewhere in the back of our minds, we started to think, I've got it from here, and tonight, or this morning, or whatever quiet moment you've carved out to hear this. I want to talk to you about that, because what nobody tells you is this: the season when everything is going right is actually the most spiritually dangerous season of your life. Let me say that again so it can land. The season when everything is going right is actually the most spiritually dangerous season of your life. Not the valley, the mountaintop. There's a moment in the book of Deuteronomy that stopped me cold the first time I really read it. Moses is standing before the people of Israel, and they are on the edge of the promised land, the land God swore to give them, the land they had been walking toward through 40 years of wilderness, through hunger and thirst and uncertainty and heartbreak. They had seen God part a sea. They had seen bread fall from the sky. They had seen water pour from a rock. And now, finally, they are there. The hardship is almost over. The suffering is almost done. And what does Moses say to them? He doesn't say celebrate. He doesn't say you've earned this. Be careful, lest when you have eaten and are full, and have built good houses and lived in them, and when your herds and flocks multiply, and your silver and gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, then your heart be lifted up, and you forget the Lord your God. Forget, not reject, not deny. That quiet, gradual, painless drift where God goes from being the center of your life to being the backup plan for your life. And if you are honest with yourself right now, if you are truly, deeply honest, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Think about who you were in the hardest season. Think about how you prayed then. There was a desperation in your prayer that felt almost uncomfortable, wasn't there? You weren't performing a ritual. You were reaching. You were on your face before God because you had nowhere else to go, nothing else to hold on to, no plan B that made sense. You cried out to Him in the dark. You whispered His name when you couldn't sleep. You opened that Bible not out of obligation, but out of hunger, because you needed something only He could give. And He showed up. He always does. But now things are different. Now there's stability. Now there's something to wake up to in the morning that feels good. And the prayers, if they come at all, are shorter. And the reaching has slowed. And that desperation that drove you into His presence has been replaced by something that feels like peace, but might actually be distance. I don't say this to make you feel guilty. I say it because I've lived it, and I imagine you have too. Here is the thing about prosperity, about ease, about the season when things finally go right. It doesn't announce its danger. The wilderness announces its danger loudly. You feel the hunger. You see the desert. You know you need help. But abundance whispers. Abundance says, look how far you've come. Look what you've built. Look at what your hands have made. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the conversation shifts from thank you to I did it. There is a name for this in Scripture. It's called forgetting, and it is one of the most consistent warnings God gives His people throughout the entire Bible. Not just in Deuteronomy, in the Psalms again and again. Forget not all His benefits. In Hosea, God mourns. When I fed them, they were satisfied. When they were satisfied, they became proud. Then they forgot me. In Revelation, Jesus says to the church at Laodicea, a church that is comfortable, wealthy, lacking nothing, He says, you say, I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. Not the suffering church. This is the pattern. Hardship drives us to God. God delivers. Comfort creates distance. Distance creates pride. Pride says, I don't really need Him the way I once did. And the cycle begins again. But here is what I want you to understand tonight. This does not have to be your story. The pattern is real, but it is not inevitable. Because there is another way to live in the good season. There is a way to hold abundance with open hands. There is a way to sit at a full table and still remember who set it. And it starts with a choice. A daily, deliberate, sometimes uncomfortable choice. To trust God, not just when you have no other option, but to trust Him especially when every other option is available to you. Let me paint a picture for you. There are two kinds of people who sit at a banquet table. The first person sits down, looks at the feast, and immediately starts eating. They are grateful in a vague general sense, but they are mostly focused on the food. The blessing has replaced the blesser in their attention. By the time the meal is over, they are full, satisfied, and God is somewhere in the background of their thoughts. A nice idea, a warm memory. The second person sits down, and before they take a single bite, they pause. They look at the table, and they remember the wilderness they walked through to get here. They remember the nights they didn't know if there would be provision. They remember the prayers that felt like they were hitting the ceiling. And then they remember that the ceiling opened, and so they pause, and they give thanks. Real thanks. Not the kind you rush through before a meal, but the kind that goes down deep into the bones of who you are. And they eat, not forgetting. And they are filled, not just with food, but with gratitude that keeps their heart tender toward the one who brought them to this table. That second person has learned something most of us have to learn the hard way. Gratitude is not just an emotion, it is a spiritual discipline. It is the practice of keeping God in the center of your story even when your circumstances no longer demand that you look to Him for survival. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with it for a moment. What changed when things got better? Not just in your circumstances, but in you? Did your prayer life grow deeper as your life grew more stable? Or did it shrink? Did your hunger for God's word increase as His provision became more visible? Or did you find it easier to skip that time in the morning because things are okay? I'll get to it later. Did you draw closer to your community of faith as the pressure lifted? Or did you drift, telling yourself you'd get back to it when life slows down, not realizing that life never really slows down? It just changes what it's asking of you. I'm not asking to condemn you. I'm asking because these are questions I have had to ask myself. And the honest answers, the ones that came up from somewhere below the surface, changed me. Here is the truth at the heart of all of this. God doesn't want your attention only when you're desperate. He doesn't want to be your emergency contact. He doesn't want to be the one you run to when everything falls apart and then set aside when everything falls into place. He wants relationship. And here is the thing about relationship. In any genuine relationship, if one person only shows up when they need something and disappears when things are good, that is not relationship. That is using. And as uncomfortable as that word is, we have to let it sit. Because God sees the whole picture of our hearts. And He knows the difference between a child who walks with Him and a child who calls only when they need rescue. This is not about God needing something from us. He doesn't need our prayers. He doesn't need our praise. He doesn't need our time. But we need the practice of giving them. Because the practice shapes us. The practice keeps our hearts in the right orientation. The practice protects us from the slow drift that happens when prosperity becomes our foundation instead of our gift. Think about what happens to a tree that stops sending its roots deeper. For a while, it looks fine. The branches are full. The fruit is visible. The shade is beautiful. But underneath there is no depth. And when the storm comes, and the storm always comes, the tree that looks the healthiest on the outside falls first, because roots matter most, not when everything is calm, but when everything shakes. And the way you build roots in the good season is by choosing to go deeper with God even when the surface is calm, even when nothing is forcing you, even when every voice in your life is saying, you don't need to press in right now. Everything is fine. That is precisely the moment to press in. There is a concept in the military called peacetime discipline. You train hardest when there is no war, because by the time the war comes, it's too late to build the muscle. You fight with the strength you built in the quiet season. This is true in the spirit too. the depth of relationship you build with God right now, in this season of relative stability or blessing or answered prayer. That depth is what you will draw from when the next hard thing comes. And it will come, not because God is cruel, but because life on this side of eternity is not a straight line upward. There are valleys between the peaks, and the person who spent the mountain season going deeper with God will enter the next valley with a strength and a peace that confounds every natural explanation. The Apostle Paul understood this. He wrote from a prison cell, "I have learned, in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content." Notice he said he learned it. It wasn't automatic. Contentment in suffering is hard, but so is contentment in abundance. He said, "I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound." That word, abound, means to have more than enough. And he frames it as something that requires the same kind of discipline as enduring hardship. Because having more than enough, without letting it pull your heart away from God, is not easy. It requires the same kind of intention, the same kind of practice, the same kind of daily returning. Can we talk about something that's hard to say? There is a version of success, a version of answered prayer, a version of the good life that is actually more dangerous to your soul than the struggle ever was. And it is the version where you got everything you asked for and kept none of the hunger that drove you to ask. I think about the parable of the prodigal son, and I think most of us identify with the son who left, who wasted everything, who came back broken and hungry. But Jesus tells us there were two sons, and the older son, the one who stayed, the one who did everything right, the one who never asked for anything scandalous. He was furious when his brother was celebrated. He went to his father and said, "These many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment." He had everything, his father's house, his father's provision, his father's presence, and yet he had never asked for a party. He had never drawn near to his father just for the joy of nearness. He had turned faithful obedience into a transaction. I do the right things. You owe me the right outcomes. And when the outcome he expected didn't arrive, the bitterness that surfaced revealed that he had been near the Father's house, but not near the Father's heart. Proximity to blessing is not the same as intimacy with God. You can be in the right church, doing the right things, giving the right offerings, serving in the right ministry, and still have a heart that is transactional rather than relational. Still have a faith that functions in the good season as a lifestyle accessory rather than a living, breathing, daily dependence on the living God. And I want to gently ask, is there any of that in you tonight? Has the good season quietly turned your faith into a formality? Have the answered prayers subtly shifted your posture from "I need you" to "I've got this"? You don't have to confess it to anyone right now, but be honest with yourself, because the honesty is the beginning of the return. The prodigal son's turning point wasn't the party at the end. It was the moment alone in the pig pen, when the Bible says he came to himself. He woke up, he stopped performing the life he was living and actually looked at it, and what he saw, the distance between where he was and who his father was, drove him home. Maybe that moment is right now for you. Not in a pig pen, maybe in the middle of a good season, but feeling the quiet ache of spiritual distance, feeling the thinness of a faith that used to run deep, sensing somewhere underneath all the success and stability and answered prayer that something has shifted, and wondering how to find your way back. Here is the good news. The same God who showed up in the wilderness is waiting for you in the abundance. He did not change when your circumstances changed. His love for you is not seasonal. His commitment to you is not conditional on how desperate you are. He is not frustrated that things are going well for you. He is not withholding his presence until you suffer enough to deserve it. He is standing at the door, right now, in the middle of the good season, knocking, waiting, not to take the blessing away, not to remind you of how bad things used to be, but to walk through the good season with you, to be with you in the abundance the same way he was with you in the wilderness. I am with you always, not just when you are struggling, not just when the prayer request is urgent, always, in the hard and in the easy, in the broken and in the beautiful, in the desperate and in the full, always. So what does it look like, practically, to trust God when things are going right? It looks like keeping your morning practice even when there is no emergency to pray through. It looks like coming to him with thanksgiving that is specific, not generic, listing out the actual things he has done, the actual moments he came through, the actual prayers he answered that you may have already started to take for granted. It looks like giving generously in the abundant season, not because you have to, but because generosity is the antidote to the hoarding spirit that abundance can breed. It looks like staying in community even when you feel like you don't need anyone right now. It looks like reading the Word not as a formula for getting more, but as a love letter from a God who wants you to know Him. It looks like submitting your plans to Him even when the plans are good, even when they make sense, even when you could absolutely execute them without prayer, choosing to invite Him in anyway. It looks like saying, out loud, in your heart, in the quiet of your morning, God, all of this is yours. I am just the steward. I hold it with open hands, and I will not let the gift eclipse the giver. I want to speak to someone specifically right now. You have been in a good season, and you know it. You've seen prayers answered in ways you didn't fully expect. Doors have opened. Provision has come. Relationships have stabilized. The thing you were believing God for months, maybe years, has finally happened. And in the relief and the joy and the thank God, it's finally here. You exhaled, and in that exhale, you also let go of the intensity of your pursuit of God, because it felt like rest, because you had been pressing and pressing and pressing, and finally you could breathe, and breathing felt like backing off, and backing off felt fine. But you've noticed something, the clarity you had in the hard season, the unmistakable sense of His presence that carried you, the way His voice felt so close, so immediate, so real. It feels further away now, not gone, just further, and you can't quite put your finger on when the distance started. The distance is not on His end. He hasn't moved. He isn't punishing you for your season of rest. He isn't waiting for you to suffer again before He draws close. He is right here. The distance exists only because of the incremental steps backward that the good season allowed you to take without noticing. And every single one of those steps can be reversed, one day at a time, one returning at a time. The prophet Hosea captures the heart of God in one of the most tender passages in all of Scripture. God says through him, "Come, let us return to the Lord. He has torn us to pieces, but He will heal us. He has injured us, but He will bind up our wounds. After 2 days He will revive us. On the third day He will restore us, that we may live in His presence." That we may live in His presence. Not that we may visit His presence when things get hard. Not that we may drop into His presence for emergencies. Live there. Make it home. Make it the place you return to every single day. Not because you have to, but because nothing in the good season tastes as sweet as it does when you share it with Him. There is a satisfaction available to you in the good season that most people never find. Because most people spend the good season chasing more of what made the season good. More success, more stability, more answered prayer, more evidence that life is going in the right direction. And there is nothing wrong with any of that. But the person who learns to take the good season back to God, who sits at the full table and still says, "You are better than all of this," who holds the blessing but refuses to be held by it. That person finds a joy that is deeper than circumstances, a peace that doesn't depend on the season staying good, a contentment that doesn't evaporate when things eventually shift. Because they never let their trust live in the season, they kept it anchored in the God who sits over every season. And that is the invitation tonight, not to be afraid of the good season, not to distrust the blessing, not to manufacture hardship so you can feel close to God again, but to make a decision, a clear, intentional, fully awake decision, that your trust in God is not a crisis response. It is a lifestyle. It is who you are, in the valley and on the mountain, in the lean years and in the abundant ones, in the waiting and in the receiving, in the desperate and in the full. You are someone who trusts God, not because you have no other option, but because you have tasted enough of His faithfulness to know He is the best option. He has always been the best option. He will always be the best option. And the good season does not change that. The good season confirms it. So don't let the blessing make you forget the blesser. Don't let the answered prayer make you feel like you've somehow graduated past needing to pray. Don't let the open door make you forget the one who opened it. Don't let the provision make you think the provision is the point. Come back to the posture that carried you through the hard season. The open hands, the bowed heart, the surrendered will, the daily choice to say, I don't have it from here, I've never had it from here, and I don't want it from here. I want you, not just what you can do for me. Let that be the prayer that defines this season. Not more, Lord, but closer, Lord. Not keep the good things coming, but keep me near you even when they do. Not protect this season, but protect my heart in this season. Because the greatest thing God could give you is not a life that always goes right. The greatest thing God could give you is a heart that stays anchored to Him, whether it does or it doesn't. And that heart is built right here, right now, in the season when things are going well, by choosing, on purpose, against the natural pull of comfort and self-sufficiency, to trust Him anyway, to seek Him anyway, to need Him anyway, not because you're pretending the blessing isn't real, but because you know, the one who gave it is even more real. So, if you're in a good season right now, receive this as a gift, a gentle hand on your shoulder, a reminder before the drift goes too far, a voice saying, don't stop here, don't settle for the blessing when the blesser is still reaching for you. Go deeper, not despite the good season, because of it, because you have more capacity to go deeper right now than you did when you were just trying to survive. Use that capacity, invest it. Let the good season be the season you built the kind of faith that will sustain you through every season that comes after. And if you're listening to this and you feel the weight of how far you've drifted, if the distance has been growing for a while and you've been ignoring it, if somewhere in the good season you quietly started trusting your own hands more than His, come home. That's all it takes. Just turn. He sees you before you take the first step back. He is already running toward you, not with correction, not with where have you been, but with open arms and a robe for your shoulders, and a ring for your finger, and the sound of a celebration that heaven throws every time a heart comes back to where it belongs. You don't have to earn your way back. So let this be the moment, right now. In the good season, in the quiet season, in the season of abundance or the season of uncertainty, let this be the moment you say, God, I don't want to only trust you when I have to. I want to trust you because I want to. I want to live in your presence, not just visit it. I want to hold every good thing you've given me with open hands and a grateful heart. And I want to want you more than I want the life you've given me. Where that prayer, prayed in sincerity, is the beginning of a faith that seasons cannot shake. Go deeper today. He is worth it. He has always been worth it. And the good season is one of the best reasons to remind yourself of that. If this word met you where you are today, share it with someone in their good season. Someone who needs to hear that the blessing is not the end of the story, that the blesser is better still, and that the best version of the good life is the one lived in close, daily, unashamed dependence on the God who made it possible. God bless you, and don't forget who brought you here.